last week's study took us through the second verse, which is titled as Searching for Evil. During the course of the discussion, and we concluded the class last week with a couple of questions. I shall bring up the first question, and then if any one of you want to clarify, answer the question, we're more than happy to hear from you all. The first question was, why is it easier to recognize the faults of others while you fail to recognize one's own faults? I repeat, why is it easier to recognize faults of others while you fail to realize one's own faults? In fact, to qualify it further, you may have the same fault within you multiple times. It's not different faults. I may see a fault in you. I can pick it up very easily. I may have the same fault within me multiple times, but I fail to see it. So the question becomes very pertinent because we all are subjected through this condition. So the reason is, the question is, why is it? Why is it so? GBK ji.
Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev. Namaskar, sir. Hari Om.
Namaskar. When we are supposed to be antarmukhi, we are always in bahyamukhi. All worldly things, what it affects on us, we will always look others. We don't look within ourselves. That is, Sattvic never have such feelings that others, what was there. He always looks at his own self. What else is deeply concerned, like vasanas, how to remove it. His job is continuous that within himself. Whereas tamasic and rajasic continuously looking at others, whatever they have, either money or comparing and continuously for his own selfishness. That selfishness is the main cause, where looking others the faults. Tyaga Buddhi, who is a giver, he never looks others' faults. He looks only his faults. That's what I feel. Maybe you have to correct me.
No, there's no question of correcting. In fact, your point is very, very apt. As you said, one reason you've actually spelled it out. I know you have your own way you put it, but the reason you said is it's easier to find others' faults because you're extroverted. Your attention is bahyamukhi, which is your outward. But once you go inward, it is easier to find your own faults. Means if you're introverted. Now, how many times in a day's transactions, how many experiences you have a perception of being extroverted vis-a-vis introverted? So you can take a standpoint every experience. Am I being extroverted or am I being introverted? Even now, while you're in this classroom, is your attention constantly to gauge, evaluate others, or am I to take this knowledge to absorb and correct myself? Because as you're talking, let's say I can start becoming judgmental. I can either appreciate or I can be non-appreciative, or I'm constantly involved in what others are saying rather than saying what is being said, what can I take, how much is it applicable to me? So even in this classroom, you can have an extroverted attitude or an introverted attitude. So that's a very valid point. In fact, the answer there is twofold. I think one point you have very clearly and correctly mentioned, sir. So really appreciate that. Thank you, Ji.
Yeah.
Hari Om. Yes. So there's one more aspect to it, but there's more to it. It's not necessary. There are only two elements to it. But if there are any other thoughts, if I can ask Mahendra Ji, did you get a chance to ponder on that question, sir?
Yeah, my thought is it is because of the ego that I have and the duality that I engage in. The moment I say that I am not the same that thou art, and then I have the ego to prove myself right, it's very easy for me to overlook and think that I am the perfect being. And to prove my superiority over the other person that I'm interacting with, I find faults. Because I have some conception of perfection, which is me, and there are no two individuals which are alike each other. So whatever the other person is not the best thing. And that's the way I preserve my turf and superiority.
Right. So primarily you're saying it could be the play of ego on your mind, which makes it difficult to find your own shortcomings. All right. There is a point. I would say it is. It almost, the ego shields you from going inward. So almost a barrier. Your ego becomes a barrier to go inward. Yeah, you have a point, a very valid point. Yes, appreciate that. Okay. Yeah. You want to say something, Ma? I'm sorry. Could you please unmute yourself?
Namaste.
Namaskar.
So it could be because of my insecurity. So I try to prove myself that I'm perfect by looking the faults in others. And why do I do it? Because I have forgotten who am I and what is my purpose here. And I try to get satisfaction from the external things.
Very interesting point. Yes, appreciate that thought. Yes, it's because of the insecurity. You go outward. All right. Okay. Fair enough. Thank you, Ma. Right. Thank you. Sai.
Hari Om Guruji.
Hari Om, Sai.
I think the reason for finding faults in others is it's simple. It's easy. It's much easier because it takes a lot of courage to accept our faults to ourselves, even not to others, but even to ourselves to accept the fault and work on it takes a lot of effort, courage, and yeah. So it's much easier to point the fingers at others or look at others' faults because it's much easier to do that.
Sai, you're repeating the question to me. The question is, why is it easier to find faults with others? You're saying it's easier, sir.
Because it doesn't take any effort. It's
Okay.
it's like a free something, you know. We feel it's at least in the short term, we feel it's like we get easy confidence or easy points to ourselves, self reward points without much effort.
By putting others down, is it?
Right. Or at least finding the fault in others and feeling good about ourselves. We feel that it comes at no cost. So we do it. We keep doing it.
I like the strategy of yours. Not that you are applying it, I'm just saying. Yeah, but I don't think it is appreciated to have that kind of an attitude, isn't it? Mm. Right. Okay. Appreciate. Right. Okay. Harish, any thoughts?
Good morning, Guruji. Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Guruji,
Will you try again, please, now?
yes, Guruji, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. My understanding is, Guruji, our ego clouds us, so we don't want to deal with our own faults, and we tend to judge others very easily because we get caught up in their qualities more than seeing the Atman in the person, the oneness of us together. We see a duality. So we only see their qualities, and we base them as people based on their qualities, not otherwise. So we take a very shallow approach on how we see people. We don't see the oneness towards it and the Atman within them. That's my understanding. So our ego clouds us to that level.
Correct. Okay. As Mahendraji also said, the ego shields you from going inward, and yeah, pretty much that's the point. I think directly in context, and also because, as I think you rightly said, that since you're very shallow, you don't have the stuff to see either goodness nor to ultimately attune to the self in others. So what easily you pick up is you start picking up negativity. I suppose it just drives on the point. We did make this point last week that the world is defined by the perception you carry.
Yes.
If I have a negative perception, I would only try to find out shortcomings or imperfections everywhere, you know.
Yes.
But it doesn't, even still, that doesn't really answer the point. It's easier to find faults outside, but it is difficult to find the same fault inside. So the answer is thereabouts, but not really in line with the question, you know. So why is it? Well, the first point we made is because you're extroverted and you're not introverted. But if you're introverted, it's easier to find fault within. But since your attention is outward, that's one point. And ego perhaps plays to a certain extent, it shields you, so you don't go within. That also can be in direct context to the question. Okay.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Right. Thank you, Harish. Yeah, Reddy Garu.
Pranam Guruji.
Namaskar.
In my view, I may not this answer given straightforward to the question, but it could be a courage and confidence. We lack seriously in self-reflect and accepting our own part. I think that first and fundamentally comes in the way. We should have that amount of courage to accept our own faults. So generally, we don't start, as GVK Rao says, we don't start looking at our insides. So I think that's first and strong barrier which holds you not to look at inside.
Yeah, you don't have the strength to know yourself, and even if you do, you don't have the courage to accept it and work on it. Yeah, perhaps from a layman's perspective, I think you really have a valid point there. You know, people don't have that courage. Yes, yes, sir. It's very valid. Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, Siddharamanji. Anything further, sir?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Shivam Guruji. I feel it is because we are full of ignorance. Our intellect is very weak. We may be having a lot of intelligence, but lack intellect.
Lack intellect. Okay. Yes. That, in fact, would lead me to the next question, but I would just leave that for a little while until I mention one point. Maybe Hirenji, you have something to add? Have you pondered on this question?
I think beyond the lack of introspection, because I'm finding in last 2-3 sessions, including 2 sessions on Kabir's Padas and last session of our Wisdom Foundation, what I find is that most of us, we do not have any commitment to introspection. We continue acquiring knowledge, which will bring it to intelligence and intellect. That I found to be the profound impact on accepting that we have any faults. And unless we introspect, we will not know even. And yeah, that is how I still think. I believe you got some other ideas as well. I cannot think of anything beyond, and my idea is the profound impact of lack of introspection. If we don't do that, nothing will happen to us. That I've realized by now. How am I going to do it? I don't know. But that is the biggest knowledge I have in last 2 sessions. That we need to go back there. We need to go back there.
Yes, I think you have reiterated the need to go inward, to do self-introspection, to do a self-analysis. It's a very scientific process. I believe some information was shared with to your benefit by Setuji. Mentioned to me that he did share with you. That helps you in the process of reflection and development of one's intellect. That gives you a guideline. So which others are already purview to. So it doesn't. We can always again share it, for reassurance of what we spoke earlier. But it is very, very important to be introverted. Not many are. Right, Ji. Yeah, I'll come to the point. In fact, that somebody had commented. I'll get them to answer it. Yes, please.
Guruji, can I point to one more thing? In general terms, when we talk about extroverted and introverted, understanding is, or was at least, that person who speaks out openly, easily, and he is considered to be extroverted, and person who doesn't speak enough or stay quiet, he is an introverted person. So here, I think the terminology is a bit different than that subtle. I think it is good to probably note that.
Yes, in fact, you could use that as a base and then further qualify those 2 terms. But as we say, extroverted is you're very outward looking. Your look is outward. Vis-a-vis introverted is one who is looking inward. And also, in the context you said, a person who's extrovert is too outspoken, too bubbly and too much of excitement. Vis-a-vis a person who's introverted is very measured, very calm. And when such people speak, people stand up and take note because they're very measured and very calm, and there's substance when they speak. And people all the time talking, you switch off. Very soon you switch off because it's only blabbers. As they say, empty vessels make a lot of noise, So it's all coming from the same base, but as you rightly said, it's either you're going outward or inward. That's the context of the words. Okay. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ji. I think a few of them are in queue. Yeah, thank you, Ma.
Hari Om Guruji. Besides extroversion, I think an impure mind makes one focus on the negative rather than seeing the positive in others. And as is often said, the world is a reflection of our own minds. So we keep on seeing the faults in others. Perhaps those faults are within me, but I do not accept them. So it's much easier to see them in the other person than to see them in myself, because if I look within and find them there, it will be too painful. I have constructed a personality or a belief about who I am. And when I start looking within, which I'm not used to doing perhaps, and when I start seeing all the chinks in the armor, it is so painful that I immediately go outward and I start looking at others and start feeling in comparison to them, I am better. So I think the impure mind could be one reason why we focus on the negative, and it's easier to see the negative in others.
Well said. But I would say, in lines to what Harish had commented earlier, it gives the concept, but it doesn't help me resolve the question that why is it difficult to find my faults. You're helping me understand the backdrop of what the verse is saying, but you're very succinctly, very beautifully captured. But if you talk of, have I really hit the nail on the head, I would say there and thereabouts. But it doesn't really answer the reason of the question. But I don't want to take away anything from what you said, but more in terms of it doesn't really answer the question. Okay, all right. Thank you, Ma. Kamalji.
Hari Om Guruji.
Hari Om, sir.
I think a lot has been said, and everybody has said a lot of good things. So one thought was coming to my mind was, I was thinking, when we say problem, how we define the problem. Problem is actually relative to our thinking. What we think, we feel that is right, another person is wrong. It's relative to our thinking. And unless we change our thinking, which can be through the introversion process, or some event happens to force us to think that way, outside our box. Otherwise, we will normally think that I am right and everybody else is wrong. And basically, what we also call is a reflexive psychology also, like the way we think, that's how we reflect on others, and we see others as doing that. So I feel it's easier because we are taking from our reference what we are thinking is correct. And when we look others, we always find, of course, no two people are going to think same way. So that's the difference is there, and we see the problem there. And what I feel is it's all relative, means it's thinking, like I may feel that somebody is not really working hard at work, and from their perspective, they may think differently. I may see that as a problem, but it may be relative to what I think. So that was just a thought.
Yeah. We're too conditioned with ourselves, is what you say. Yeah. See, if I can say that, why is that fellow so greedy and selfish? I may be more greedy and selfish than other fellow to whom I'm pointing. Yet I fail to see my own selfishness and my own greed. So,
yeah. Another example comes to my mind is like person might be morally very honest, and if we see somebody like doing some corruption or a bad thing, we may find fault there, or maybe feel that that's a kind of criminal thing person is doing. But as a person who is corrupt or doing wrong thing, he may feel that the honest person is a stupid person, he's not doing that, It's all kind of relative how they're thinking, what their base is.
Kamalji, I wanted to comment this, but that is not the purview of the question. The question is, you have a fault, I have the same fault. It's easier to find your fault, but not recognize the same fault within me. It's not a question of what is the value systems of, what are the different value systems and different perceptions. That is different. As you say, for a corrupt person, for a businessman, corruption is the way and means to get things done. You have to grease palms to get work done. He doesn't see anything wrong with it. That is the way the business is run. For a person who's ethical, he thinks, I don't think I would want to go that route to get my job done. I'll go through the means of loss. That's a different perspective to work. We are just slightly different things.
I was trying to highlight it's just a relative thinking which one person has.
No, your point is right, but it is not in the context of the question we are asking. If you think along with me, sir, my point is that we are being very precise. It's almost like a laser. I'm pointing it out that when we find a fault, I took the example, if I may say, A is greedy. Why is he greedy and being selfish? I can find out, I'm very sharp at picking up how selfish or how greedy he is, but I don't realize to what extent I am selfish, I am being greedy.
Right.
The same fault is within me, but I fail to realize within, but I'm quick to point out that flaw. It could be infinitesimal in another person, or I fail to see it within, but easily I pick up the same fault, even if it's a small speck, I pick it up. That's the thing. So I'm just trying to streamline the thoughts to that precise aspect,
Okay.
you know?
Yeah.
And this exercise, what we are going through, you may say it's consuming time, but the exercise we're going through, what it primarily does is it develops your intellect. Vis-a-vis me giving you an idea and making you intelligent. If you become intelligent, you will keep chanting, you will keep talking, you will become professors, you will become lecturers, you will become philosophers, you will lecture to outsiders. But if you go through this process of question and answer and being guided as to how precise you got to be to the point, and it's actually, that is the exercise of the intellect. So I'm putting it in a classroom, but once you do this process on your own, that's when you develop what we call it as a clarity of thought, vis-a-vis a general concept. So quite a few of you are giving various concepts related to the context. I am not wanting concepts to the context. I am asking a question and answer to this point. So your thinking has to be very, very precise. This point answers this question. It is not a generic concept we're talking. It's all a part and parcel of the exercise of developing the clarity of thought. Not that you're wrong, but it's just trying to be very, very precise. And we're all in the process of learning, we experience it. So it is not, don't feel in any way, it's not to hurt you to say, when you say that it's not in the context or doesn't answer the question, it's what the objective we are trying to achieve, But I appreciate, and I know the point you're making. It's very apt to community, but in the context and what I'm trying to drive home, please take a note. Okay, right, Ji. Thank you. Somebody who's raising hand is, I don't know, your name, sir, or ma'am, I don't know who you are. The least you could do is switch on your camera. The least you could do is name yourself. Understand you are in a forum. So there's a certain etiquette. I think I'll appreciate that you will also appreciate. We all in a platform and we have to be very approachable. You are most welcome to be a part of it. May I know who are you, sir? Oh, ma'am.
Hari Om, Guruji. I'm Sudhakar here. From here. Sorry, Guruji, I'm not able to open up my video. There is something wrong with the Zoom. That's
sir,
why
we will not allow you. We will not allow you to speak anymore, sir.
I'm extremely sorry. I'm trying my level best. Since you asked me to open up my video, I could not open it.
Sir, and you will have to pay a very hefty fine when you come back from US.
Definitely, absolutely. It is my pleasure. I'm trying, Guruji. I'm trying.
No. Now, no, don't worry. No, I see, because I don't know who it was. Now you see. Okay, great. Yes.
Yeah, you are able to see me, Guruji. Now I am able to do it.
Yeah, good, very good. No. Sudhakarji is very, very close, so part of us.
But for your insistence, I wouldn't have able to get it done. I think, I have been trying for a long time.
No issue. Yes, sir. Please, good to have you. Yes, sir. Any thoughts?
I think people derive a kind of satisfaction by criticizing other people, by finding the faults, and they become addictive also, and they make it as a habit. And basically, somewhere I remember that I read somewhere, this type of attitude releases a chemical called dopamine, which is highly addictive, just like other alcohol or something like that. And some people, it is just because of the weak mind and weak intellect. There is no introspection here, and there is no looking inward, and there is no proper thinking, and basic education levels also, basic cultural levels also. And all these things contribute to this type of weakness. That is what I feel. Basically, it is a human weakness. That is what I felt, and people, they often do this without knowing to themselves.
Correct. I think you have made a very valid point, very beautiful point. I only want to qualify that first point you made. You said satisfaction. This is a false sense of satisfaction.
Yes.
This is not true satisfaction.
Yes.
It is rewarding. It is satisfying, but it's not true satisfaction. No.
Yes.
Right. Wonderful. Wonderful, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Hari Om.
Hari Om, sir. Hari Om. Yes, I.
Hi, Guru.
Yes, sir.
Another point relating to sports, same thing. Maybe I just want to make a quick point. For example, if you take the analogy of sports or a badminton, let us say, so if as a player, if I find the fault or a weakness in other player, for example, he's not good at backhand, I'm targeting his backhand. I can probably win the match without making too much effort on improving my game. So in that context, there is some advantage to it, but in the long term, I cannot keep doing it. So it has some short-term gains, but ultimately I have to improve my game. So,
you should win. Yeah, that's being sport. In sport, you always try to win over others' weaknesses, isn't it? But a good player will win over everybody. So I get your point. Yeah. Interesting. Yes. Good observation. Yeah. Yes, Hariji.
Guruji, additional to this particular question, I have a comment that the like and dislike or the judgment, our judgment about others, also play a key role in finding fault with others. For example, the same action, if the same action, if A does, I find fault with him. But identical action done by B, I try to justify, I try to support him. My judgment about A and B are different. So based on my judgment, I try to evaluate.
You know what you've smartly done. I don't know how many of you have noticed what Hariji has done. What you've smartly done is you have changed the question. You're qualifying the question.
No. I didn't change. I was supplementing that question.
That's what you're qualifying the question.
Yeah. Okay.
Your understanding is right. Your point is right. Your point is right. But again, you're qualifying the question. You're tampering with the question. Not allowed to tamper.
Okay. Sorry, I withdraw.
Fine. You have to pay fine for that. Yes, Haresh.
Guruji, another thought came for the answer, if I may share, please.
Yes, please.
I think the reason why we find fault in others but fail to recognize faults, I think is we are insecure. We are insecure and we feel incompetent and incomplete. So we don't want to deal with our faults due to these reasons. Hence, we throw it back on the outside versus looking on the inside. It's due to our insecurity and incompleteness. That's the other answer I came up.
Yeah, I think you're reiterating somebody had already mentioned. I think Mrs. Mahinderji already mentioned that insecurity. I think, but it is very apt. It has been stated, and it just feels very sorry state of where we are, isn't it?
Yes.
If this is what the state we are in, you got to be very sorry for yourself. I got to be very sorry for myself if I am in this state. And The reality of it is we all are. So it's not how intellectual I've become, how intelligent I've become after the satsang is like the visit to the doctor with some reports confirms that I've got cancer within. Oh my God. Oh my God. What have I to do now to get rid of this disease within me? And the doctor says, don't worry, it's just initial stage, or it is in a process, a stage where it can be treated. It's not fatal, but it is something which you need to be concerned about. That is the state we all got to be in after this thought process. That I've got a cancerous disease within me and I can't find any comfort in not going inward. So if you still continue to be extroverted, it is just being, as Setuji said, complete blanketed in ignorance, complete ignorance. And doctor tells you got cancer, and doctor of yours is a good friend. You say, doctor, after the appointment, you say, doc, shall we go for a party this weekend? Hey, do you know the seriousness and the gravity of the situation you have just revealed to you? You got a cancer. It is spreading. It is going to destroy. It is destroying you. You do not know, and I bring it to attention, and you say, we'll go for a party this weekend. Something wrong with you. Wake up. So this should bring you to that heightened awareness that, my God, there's something so negative and it is destroying me. I'm very happy finding faults with the world and imperfections outside and oblivious to what's happening within me. That is personification of tamas. Absolute reckless and heedless attitude to life, to yourself, to your life and your state you're in. And what all of this discussion can bring to a conclusion. I wouldn't conclude. I want to make that point, which I wanted to say earlier. But what it concludes is it has to, as I said, the bulb must start glowing within. And said, my God, I wasted enough of my time, enough of my life being concerned of the world. I must start disregarding the world and start thinking of myself and get serious of my own life. Enough and enough and enough has been wasted. All my life has gone in vain in reforming others and changing others and correcting others. For once, let me start the process by going inward. It's like I'm having a cancer within. Remember, in fact, that's the answer you must have. It's like a cancer within, and I'm finding others' problems and find out if there's a cancer within. That kind of an urgency sets in if you really get into the spirit of the message. You know, what have you got to do with others' problems? Let them deal with their problems. You have enough problems of your own. Start dealing with it, man. In fact, Ramatirtha says, reforming the world is like straightening a dog's tail. You want to bring about a reformation or a change in the world, it's like straightening a dog's tail. So don't waste your time in that effort. Just reform yourself. All right. Thank you, Harish. Yeah, Vijay Raghavanji. Thank you.
Pranam, Guruji.
Namaskar.
I was wondering, Guruji, is it a case of poorly developed conscience, which also implies that lack of or very little usage of intellect and then developing an old solely internal frame of reference?
I would actually take a very strong objection to the first half of the statement you said of poor conscience. Is that what you stated, sir?
Yeah, poorly developed in the sense that leads to double standard.
No. Sir, the conscience, why I said in such strong words that strongly object I would never use those words. No? Even if somebody gives a wrong answer, I'll go along with them and tell them. But the reason I take the liberty in telling you, I strongly object, is because the concept of conscience doesn't evolve or devolve. So the poorly developed conscience doesn't exist in the spiritual dictionary or human dictionary. Conscience is the same from birth to death. The conscience is the same in a sinner and a saint. So that is the same factor in everybody. Now, what varies is, why is a saint a saint? Why is a sinner a sinner? A sinner doesn't attune to his conscience, unless you meant that. I know.
Allowing the elbow room for the conscience to act is...
The conscience is all that I am saying. It's just that I don't heed to it. See, even in a criminal, the conscience is saying, don't do it. A rapist who wants to fall for that temptation and destroy life of an innocent woman, that the buddhi in him, he knows he's doing wrong. The conscience in him is killing him every moment. The moment he wanted to manipulate that opportunity or abuse that experience, the conscience has not comforted him. The conscience is bothering him, but still he would say, go to hell with it. He rejects it. So it's not that a person who commits a crime, his conscience doesn't prompt. There's a possibility, a very much possibility, that your conscience is not supporting, and I have gone against.
Guruji, what about people who we generally term as people who are living ignorance is bliss in a state, in which case, basically they are not aware that they are doing something wrong. In that context, in the sense that the intellect does not come and then say that, hey, what you're doing is wrong. And to that extent, I possibly use the terminology poorly developed. In the sense, like, we have discussed, I suppose, in a different session before, that people who do not think that jumping a queue is wrong and then keep going, they also ought to know that it is wrong. They don't, they just do it ignorantly. They don't even have any guilt. How do we look at that?
Now, to put it in the familiar terms, a tamasic state is ignorance is bliss. A rajasic state is you fall a prey to your passion, not supported by the value systems or the intellect to guide you in the right course of action. I repeat, tamas is ignorance, and as you rightly said, ignorance is bliss. All right. Rajas is a person who is passionately driven. Intellect is not able to control his mind's temptations or the weaknesses. And the intellect is not able to follow the guidance given by the conscience. So a Rajasic fellow knows it and doesn't heed to it. A Tamasic fellow doesn't hear it at all. A Sattvic person hears it and heeds it. I repeat, to summarize it, Tamasic person doesn't hear it. Rajasic person hears it, doesn't heed to it. A Sattvic person, he hears it, heeds it, upholds his conscience. That's all. The conscience is the same in all three people. A Tamasic fellow is not able to even hear what the conscience is saying. A Rajasic fellow hears it, but the strength of the desire and the mind takes over. So it doesn't heed to the conscience. He knows it, he doesn't heed to it. A Sattvic person, since his mind is calm, intellect is sharp, he clearly knows what the conscience is saying. He hears it and he heeds it, he upholds it and lives a life of Satyam. Does that clarify, sir?
Yes, Guruji, I need to think a little more about that. I will come back.
Yeah, but I would
Not-
appreciate if you could capture the last 3 points I've made.
Yes,
How a tamasic person, rajasic and sattva, how these 3 deal with the conscience, how they relate to the conscience. And is experience to experience, it's moment to moment. It's very dynamic. It's very dynamic. All right, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Please come back if there's any clarity required. Right, sir. Further clarity, rather. Gayatri Ma.
Yeah, in all the people, what they have said, one is not said is that to others, we just said as witness and, watch what are they are doing. In our own self, we are attached. We don't see this as a witness.
This is a point I was looking for. I know she commented. I think Vasantam also has put it that you see and you love yourself in your own way. She has put it, slightly different, but in your own way. But the point is where you are too involved, attached to yourself, you are very partial to yourself. But when you are to others, you're a witness. Witness is to stand apart and watch. So you are impartial to others. But when you are to yourself, you are too involved, you're attached, and you become very partial. So you tend to justify, isn't it? So that perhaps a couple of new terms I'm using, you become very impartial to others, but you become very partial to yourself. Why you become partial to yourself? Because you're too involved, you're too attached, you're very favorable to yourself. Partial means you're very favorable. But when you're to others, you're very impartial. You've got nothing to do with it. It means you stand apart. And the fact that you're distant to them, you're able to clearly see. So, is to make the point very clear. If I hold the document, you all say the document. If I hold the document at a fair distance from my eyes, I can clearly read. But if I keep this document right in front of me, how bold the character is, if I put right in front of me, I can't see anything. So keeping the document close to eyes is the faults you have is you are within yourself. And since it's too close to you, you're too involved with yourself, you don't know. But since you are at a distance from me, so I can clearly see what it is. So you're too involved. But if you want to find the fault, you need to be a little more objective. So the quality you need to practice, which Gayatri Ma is saying, is you're not objective to yourself. Objective is being a witness. So you look at yourself as you're looking at anybody else. And that's the job of the intellect. If you do that, if you use that intellect wholesomely, it will give you a very fair stock of who you are, what needs to be done so that it can be done. Very good, Gayatri Ma. That was a point.